Dear Jesus. So how do I put this? Lately, I've just felt like my life is a little too much like when Peter tried to walk on water. You remember that one? You were there, your disciples were there, they were on the boat in the middle of the sea, but you were all cool walking on the water because who needs a boat, right? And then here comes one of your disciples, Peter, and Pete over here just really wanted to walk on that water with you. It's safe, you said. I'm Jesus, you said. What could go wrong? And then, of course, here comes Peter, and well, you know the rest. Yeah, that right there pretty much sums up my life right now. But on another note, happy belated New Year, everybody. So yeah, it's been quite a while since we posted on this channel, but we're back! And with one of my favorite stories of all time, the one where Peter walks on water. Well, sinks in water. That's like the opposite of walking. Good job, Peter. And since sinking pretty much sums up my life right now, I thought it would be pretty fitting to kick off this new 2018 season here at GGCtoday with this story. So, yeah. Let's go! So this story kicks off with the disciples being stranded on a boat in the middle of the sea. They were trying really hard to row their way forward, but alas, every single one of their efforts failed as the wind was against them and the waves were tossing the boat from side to side. Later though, Jesus would suddenly come out of nowhere when they most needed him, walking on the water, and everybody cheered and they lived happily ever after. Wait a minute, that's not how it went. What really happened is that when Jesus appeared to them walking on the water, the disciples actually thought he was a ghost and they all panicked. But of course, Jesus tried to calm them all down, saying, "Hey, don't worry, it's me, Jesus." But here's where the story gets good, because at this point, Peter, one of my favorite disciples, stands up and says, "If it's really you, Jesus, make it possible for me to walk to you on the water." And here Jesus says, "All right, come here, you little rascal." Well, maybe he didn't say it like that. It was more like a, come. And as we all know, Peter actually begins to walk on water. For like 2 seconds. You see, the problem was that as Peter began to walk on water, he began to notice the dangers around him. And like any normal human being would in his place, he got scared. And worse, he began to sink. And as he sank, he cried out, "Lord, save me!" Finally, as we all know, a very disappointed Jesus pulls him out of the water and then says his very famous line, which we all know and love, "Oh, you of little faith, why did you doubt?" And I would like to kind of pause this right here to say something real quick. Peter, he just jumped off the boat in the middle of the sea, in the middle of a storm. Who in the world does that? And this is a point I really want to focus on, because Peter must have believed that the person right in front of him walking on the water was indeed Jesus. Can you imagine the faith it takes to get off a boat in the middle of the ocean when the water is like this? I mean, I would never do something like that unless I was 1000% sure that I literally had Jesus Christ standing right in front of you, and even then I'd still think about it, because all it takes is one measly little wave and you're gone, and no amount of swimming lessons with Coach Nathan can save you from that. And I really want to dive into that part of the story, because many people put the blame of Peter sinking on Peter's lack of faith in Jesus' power and Jesus' presence. Look, the simple fact that Pete stepped out of the boat to begin with was because he had faith that it was Jesus who was out there, and because he had faith that Jesus was in complete control over the water. So you bet when Peter stepped out of the boat, and even when he was out there walking on the water, he was fully convinced that he had Jesus Christ right in front of him. And how could he not when both him and his buddies who were on the boat with him all see that same man walking in the middle of the storm? It wasn't just Peter who was witnessing this. And Jesus, you know, their pal with a history of working miracles, is not on the boat with them. So I mean, the math just adds up. Peter had all the evidence, all the logic, so stepping off the boat was not blind faith. It was a decision taken out of complete confidence. So it's very hard to accept that Peter doubted in Jesus' power and presence when Peter literally had Jesus Christ right in front of him, and he was witnessing his power with his very own eyes. Now don't get me wrong, Peter did doubt something. It's just that I don't think his doubt was at all directed at the power of Jesus or the presence of Jesus like pretty much everyone else argues. I think there's something here that everybody is missing. So let's rewind a little bit. Many people like to focus on the water walking aspect of this story, saying that that's the miracle. But I would like to argue that the real miracle happens afterwards, right here to be exact, sinking. Because here we have Jesus Christ, right? The most powerful being in the universe, God himself, whom all nature obeys, and we have this very same Jesus telling Peter that the water is safe to walk on. I mean, if Jesus tells you it's safe, then you better believe the water must be as hard as concrete because, well, he's Jesus, the Son of God. And because he was Jesus, the Son of God, sinking was more improbable than actually walking on the water. And yet somehow, Peter, this dude right here, finds a way to sink. Forget about walking on water, sinking was the real miracle here. Because Jesus, the commander of the universe, made that water walkable, and yet Peter still sank. It takes a real talent to mess up that hard. So cutting back to the story, when Peter cries out, "Lord, help," it's not so much a cry for help as it is a cry for mercy. I mean, just put yourself in Peter's shoes. You just failed God, even though God made it literally impossible for you to fail. Peter must have been feeling super guilty. He must have felt God would not save him after such a spectacular fail. So it's no wonder when Jesus pulls him out of the water, he says, "Oh, you of little faith, why did you doubt?" You see, Jesus is not talking about Peter doubting in God's power. He's referring to Peter doubting in his compassion to save him after he failed in such an incredible way. And that's why I love this story, because it really hits close to home with me. People get mad at it for a lot of things, right? But I think what bothers me the most, personally, is when other people expect me to react to situations in the worst way possible, instead of just trusting that I'm a good person who really does care about others and will react in the best and nicest way possible. It just sucks when people see you as what you are not. And I think that's what I see from God in this story. I see someone who is just disappointed that we are so quick to see him as this awful, condemning God who doesn't care about anybody, instead of seeing him for who he really is, which is someone who always wants to help and do good to others. The line, "Oh, you of little faith," is directed not at our knowledge of God's power, but at our image of God's character. And I'm gonna get personal here. Sometimes I'm like Peter. I get the help of God, and even with that, I still find a way to royally screw up. And out of my mouth comes out, "God help me," but in the back of my mind, I am half expecting God to just let me be consumed by my failures. And that's wrong. And precisely what makes this story so important, because it challenges our perspective on how God is. Yes, failure, sinking, is very possible even when we have God's help on our side. But drowning, being abandoned by God in our failures, is simply not possible because of the nature of who God is. So when you fail, don't panic. You're human. Mistakes happen even when God is on your side. Just take a deep breath and know that God will not abandon you, but rather, like with Peter, God is there ready to help you get above those difficult failures because that's who he is. Always compassionate and always willing to help. So that's all the time that we have for today. I hope this was different. This has been Good Ground Community, GGC Today, and I hope you have a great day. Bye-bye.